1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, May the 2nd, 2023. It is now the 34th episode of Effluvium. And for this special edition, we're going to go one-on-one with my guest, Brooke Belldon of Sainte Cellier. Sainte Cellier is a carefully curated selection of original niche perfumes from around the world. The fragrances in the Sainte Cellier collection are specially selected for their unique character and exquisite craftsmanship. And the brands that she carries are among some that I quite admire myself. Eris Parfums, for which I did a review of Ma Bête yesterday on my Instagram. Also, previous guest Christophe Laudaniel, the Zoo, Rubini Perfumi, Isabelle Langlion, Les Indémodables, Vogue, and Versus Parfum. And we're going to cover a number of different subjects. We'll ask a few questions. And we'll also just let the conversation go organically, which is sometimes the best thing. So we'll have her come in very shortly. She is waiting in the wings backstage, and I'm delighted to have her. We're going to take a look at the chat here. Say hello to some folks. Hello, Line on Beauty. Great to have you tuning in. Heinrich. Tally ho, my friend. I tip my hat to you. Hello, DJ. And Josie, great to see you. And the Sentiest. Hey, hey, hey. And thank you for the compliments on the intro. And Bren, wonderful to see you as well. Glad that you could tune in for this episode. Hi there, Amanda. Great to see you too. Glad that you could come back. All right. So without further ado, we're going to forego the 3 first impressions for yet another week. I will be resuming that next week. And if anybody wants to mention their scent of the day, afternoon, evening, mine for the afternoon is a vintage. It is Amplez-Vous, Coty Amplez-Vous. It is a Bernard Champ creation. It is obvious he was under the tutelage of Jammy Cellier with this one, and it shows where he would further develop these ideas, following Cabochard and into Aramis. It's sort of an in-between, bridging the more floral leather of Cabochard. Oh, what was that? There's a little snap, crackle, pop there. Hopefully nothing's wrong. But it bridges that more floral leather character of Cabochard with the sort of the meatier leather that you would see in Aguirre and Aramis. So it's a lovely little number here on Amplez-Vous. One of the latter-day Coty classics that it's been long discontinued. It was discontinued in the late 70s or early 80s, if I'm not mistaken. But I found this wonderfully pristine bottle. It is pressurized, so I go easy on the sprays, or else this is going to go. It's happened to me before. All right. And Josie's scent of the day, Ambre Sapin, is at the Les Indémodables. We are sentient. Hello, hello. We're going to bring on the Brooke in 1 second. I don't want to keep her waiting for much longer. Jovan's Sex Appeal. I loved your write-up. Now that is a hot number. Love it. A lot of flashbacks in the memory bank smelling that one. Nick, hey. Scent of the evening, Oubigan Fougère Royale, Eau de Parfum. Love the chamomile note in that one. Ellena Beauty, Claire de Mosque. And DJ Monsieur Lambrun Vetiver. Very nice. Hi, Benji. Ooh, I just brought up Nick's comment again. Fig My Love by Zoo. Great. How germane, how relevant. Sample actually came courtesy of Brooke. Yes, very relevant. Okay, excellent. I think we're all caught up in the chat. At the moment, we currently have 22 people tuned in. And without further ado, if this were a live audience, I would ask that you all give a round of applause. Here is Brooke. Hi.
Hello.
Thank you so much for accepting my invitation to chat.
Thank you for inviting me.
Of course, of course. So let's get this started. It's going to be a one-on-one panel, very small panel. This is the smallest one that we've had so far, but hey, it means more banter between the two of us. So I wanted to ask you a couple of questions ahead of time and just kind of get a little background on your journey with perfume and where that all started. Tell us where it all began.
Well, I guess I've probably worn perfume, since going back all the way to high school, and I was very lucky. Like when I left home, I found myself living in a townhouse, and I had my next door neighbor was this fantastic drag performer, and they were also an account representative for Lancome. So whenever they would go out to like work and visit all the Lancome concessions at all the various department stores, they would always bring back perfumes and, like, lots of makeups, but, I mean, it was always, like, the perfumes that I was, like, most excited about, and they sort of introduced me to things like, Chanel Number 19, Cristal, Furca, Dolce& and Gabbana, Michael Kors, just, like, a lot of things that, I didn't realize at the time were, so just amazing perfumes. I didn't know anything about perfume then. I was just sort of wearing things that I liked, and, um, so yeah, and kind of looking back on those fragrances now, I realize, just how wonderful they really were, and, I continued wearing I always had a bit of a casual relationship with perfume,
Mm,
kind of discovering Serge Lutens' Tuberose Criminelle was, like, a big, kind of game changer for me just because, it made me realize that, it changed basically the dynamic between, like, wearer and perfume, as, like, before that, I always kind of viewed perfume as, like, something that was trying to be liked. It was trying to be nice, to be pleasing, and, uh, Tuberose Criminelle just, like, totally, like, just changed that whole relationship, in my opinion, and it made me look at other things I had previously been wearing in this, like a different filter, I guess, and, you could then see things like Chanel Number 19 as being, like, quite aloof and, um, just a bit, I guess, cold and
steely,
yeah.
austere. Yeah.
And, yeah, and just kinda going on from that, um I had a bit of in 2010, I had quite a serious, health issue,
Mm,
and I was, like, quite, unwell for probably about 3 years,
mm,
and it was like everything just became, like, this weird, like, going into hospital, like, recovering, consultations, and it was just a really, like, strange time, and,
mm, mm,
kind of just, like, over this time when I hadn't been, like, kind of, like, actively participating in life, I guess, and it was like I hadn't worn any perfume, and just, like, one day, I, um, I just put on, like, a bit of Eau de Nuit, and
mm,
it was like going from a period of, like, black and white, and it was like just seeing color again. It just kind of, gave me something at that time that I guess I really needed, and, because I was unwell, I really wasn't able to get it in other places, so
mm,
I guess, that that whole experience just, made me realize things that you could find in perfume, I guess, if you sort of allowed yourself to, because, I don't know, I think, like, beauty is really important. I think especially, like, when you're kind of going through something, just, like, having these interactions with something that is, aspirational and uplifting is
mm,
just so, it's a very powerful thing at that time, and I guess because, perfume doesn't really require anything of us other than to just sort of exist with it and, maybe pay a bit of attention. And, I don't know, and I guess in that period and coming out of it, then having the opportunity to like work within the fragrance industry felt really um, meaningful to be able to, I guess, give something back to it because I felt that it kind of gave me a lot when I needed it.
mm, mm. It is true about perfume. The way that it can illuminate and animate, where maybe it might be difficult otherwise. I can relate to that from
Yes.
my own personal experience. And some fragrances really do facilitate that. And you mentioned too, my goodness, number 19, and don't even get me started about Vol de Nuit. I mean, it's just breathtaking. It's one of my
It is.
all-time favorites. So
It was
dear to me.
my first Guerlain was Vol de Nuit, and actually my first ever
Wow.
vintage perfume was Vol de Nuit as well, because I loved the modern one so much. I wanted to see what the vintage was like.
Yeah, yeah. I have the eau de toilette and the parfum, the pure parfum. That's très. I would love to sample one of the more vintage versions of it. So those are two, extraordinary perfumes. And somebody in the chat right now, Nick S, is saying right here, number 19 and Vol de Nuit. I like this lady's taste in fragrances. So maybe we want to hear a little bit more. What are some of the other fragrances that most resonate with you, that you're most bonded with?
I love green perfumes, kind of
Yeah.
anything from like spiky, venom dripping talon greens to
Yes.
the more sort of like impressionistic things like en passant. I really like.
Mm,
I like things that kind of smell like cold, a bit like cool smelling. Um, so I really kind of like green perfumes and just all the dimensions of them.
you and me both. I think that's maybe how we kind of started to sort of bond on Instagram, is through sharing some of the taste in green fragrances. And you're absolutely right. It really runs the gamut. And I think that people who are kind of new to the idea of green in fragrance, or they're not very familiar with it, think it's just one type of green. But my God, like there's so many: grassy green, leafy green, herbal green, fougere green, um, the galbanum green, which is unique in itself. It just is
Yes.
everywhere. Yeah. And when you were mentioning some of the more severe versions, I was thinking like Nuit Tabacali, which is like
Oh my
to
god,
the nth
yeah.
degree. But
I love
yeah.
that perfume. I was
Mm,
really fortunate to work in a shop in London that was, selling it, and, being able to introduce, that perfume to people was just it was so much fun. I mean, everybody's experiences to it were just always different, like, nobody's was was the same. And and I was used to, like because of, like, my relationship with green smells, like, I would always be like, "Yeah, it's just, like, it's my, uh, fragrant body armor." Like, I'm just, like, really going, like, off, like, really poetic about it, and, like, then this one guy's just like, fresh cut grass," and I was just like, "No, no."
yes. That's too reductive. There's so much more going on here. It's more than just that. Yeah, yeah. But that's the thing. Like we all have this relationship to scent, and I have to restrain myself when people, reduce it to something so simplistic. I'm like, don't you see the beauty? Like, don't you notice everything else? But yeah, yeah. Green is wonderful. I love green fragrances. I'm trying to think of maybe the first one that really struck me. I think actually what really made me a green fiend, it was Giacomo Silences, which is sort of like
Oh, yeah.
taken from
Yeah.
that, the early 70s green sheepra. And it's sort of like just before it was sort of, they were moving away from that. That was like the last hurrah. That was like the last successful one. And it was really an intense green, but that's the one
Yeah.
that really did it for me. Um, but yeah, yeah, great. What are some other uh, fragrance styles that speak to you?
Well, I love sheep roses, even as difficult as they are to find in modern perfumes. I like them because they're very they're quite angular, and I think I like that they're just kind of difficult. They're difficult to
Mm,
they take a long time, basically. They sort of reward you for like the time that you spend with them, and I think
mhm,
that's a really, especially now, like when you know people shopping in, like, perfume stores, they want to give something all about like 10 seconds to see if it kind of captures his attention. So
Right.
I think the obstinacy of the sheepras is something I really admire, and how it does kind of pay off, you know, if you spend a day with it and really get to know it. And I like that about it. It's not like quite as obvious as like some of the other things.
Right, right. I always say with sheepras, it's not going to be instant gratification with a sheepra. Sort of like you have to meet them where they are. They're not going to come to you and please you. It's kind of like it's not a dog perfume, it's a cat perfume. Which kind of
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
once you do lean into it, and I mean, the development of sheepras is so fascinating. How you get that opening, and you barely even get a suggestion of where it's even going to go. Like often with many sheepras, where it's going to go even like a half hour or hour later. And I love, not that I dislike not like linear development, but when they're so non-linear and when they go through these sort of like, it's sort of like tantamount to like a score, a movie score, or sort of like in classical music that I'm having a mental block, but from one movement to
Yes.
another, I love that. I love that.
Well,
Yeah.
it's when they kind of like come back and from from the other side. It's like you get both movements and they sort of like meet in the middle. I mean,
Yeah.
I think, you know, a lot of people's um what they don't like about modern perfumes is they will give you, you know, a lot of them are giving you their best right away. You know, I call these perfumes like the pants out curb appeal perfumes, because it's like they're just trying to get you like as you're passing by. But again, like that just they're made like that because of the customer experience. And you know, like in a store, they just have to give. And you know, customers aren't really like they're not really getting they're not really exploring perfume in a meaningful way in many retail settings.
Yeah, yeah. I call them front loaded. It's like
Yes.
all of the everything. It's all big showstopper. It's all there to kind of reel you in, hook, line, and sinker. And oh, this smells fantastic. And so often it's just this precipitous decline and just something sort of nebulous and uncertain and
Yes.
kind of almost nagging after a while. It's like, where did all that beauty go? Yeah. But of course, as we both know, there are many exceptions to that in modern perfumery, and you do
Yes.
carry a number of houses that do defy that. And it's almost, I feel like you have an excellent curatorial taste in
Thank
finding
you.
those houses that do go against that sort of that grain of what commercial perfumery is today, which is excellent. I mean, so some of the houses I really do admire, like Eris and Les Indemodables, just impeccable. It is that that real attention to the artistry and craft of perfumery, and honoring its past, but also looking forward as well, which I think is a great balance. So it's really great. I'm just going to go to the chat just a little bit here, and there was actually a question we had from Ricky Tomatoes. Scent of the Day Dior Spice Blend. Have I sampled that one? I must admit that I have not. I'm actually quite ignorant of the private collection from Dior, and I probably would be reproached by some for that, but I haven't really explored too many. And I think the ones that if I were to start off with, it would probably be, what is it, the Gris Noir? Wait, is it Eau Noir? There's another one with the word gray in it, but Eau Noir and Bois d'Argent were the ones that folks have said that would most appeal to me out of the line.
I think Bois d'Argent is a bit overrated.
Bit overrated?
I think so, yeah, I mean, just my opinion.
There's my list. Time to cross it out. No need for that.
I did try it just because I thought, you know, a lot of people whose taste I respect, you know, had raved about it, but I don't know, I was a bit underwhelmed by it. I don't know if I had set myself up to be disappointed, but just my unpopular opinion.
No, that's fine. You know what? It's important to have opinions, and it's important to be be okay with being open and transparent about it too. It's like, you can't please everyone. We don't all have the
Yes.
same exact taste. So I always encourage that. I think it's great where, you can have like a little bit of a little friendly scuffle, like, oh my God, I can't believe you don't like that, but that's okay. Because we can't all like the same thing. So, but I also like when somebody can say something like it's overrated, because with the surplus of things that I'm looking at to sample, it just makes it easier for me to shorten the list a little
What's
bit.
next on your list?
Exactly.
What's next on your list to try, though?
Oh, nice segue. Next to try. Good question. I actually was curious about the indigo smoke from Arquiste.
Oh, yeah.
Rachel, who is usually my co-host here, wonderful, wonderful person, a good friend in the community. She recommended Indigo Smoke to me, and that's one of the newer releases that I'd like to check out. A few other newer releases, Penhaligon's has High Grove Bouquet, which is this sort of conceptual fragrance about the High Grove Gardens, and it has a linden tree, a linden blossom note, and I love linden blossom. It seems to sort of fit in line with their sort of earlier sort of heritage collection. It even has a label that's similar to like Hammam Bouquet and the earlier ones. So that's another one. I just sampled Hermes. What's the name? Sainte is part of the name, but the one that has a pistachio accord in it was a little let down.
Really?
Yeah, it opened a bit screechy and synthetic. And the pistachio accord has potential, though. So when it dried down a little bit, I felt like if this was in a different context, this element of it, that might be nice. But whatever was surrounding it, I had a very difficult time with. Amanda Bideau actually says that High Grove is beautiful, which is exciting. Love to try
That's
that.
a good endorsement.
Yeah. Rachel is saying that she's going to be putting a sample of Indigo Smoke in the mail for me. It's very sweet of her. Yes, the new one, Christina Gel. And I'm not anti-Christina Gel by any means. There's some of her work
she's
that
fantastic perfumer.
Yeah, not every fragrance is going to, not every master perfumer is going to knock it out of the park. For personal taste. I mean, I don't want to say that objectively, because this particular fragrance might be, the bee's knees to somebody else. But yeah, one of my favorites of hers is Galop d'Hermes, beautiful rosy leather with that quince note, very quenching in the heart, beautiful leather dry down. I think that one's absolutely beautiful.
And that was the first one that she did for them when she became their in-house, wasn't it?
I think so. When she was passing they were passing the reins from Ellena. Yeah, and I think it's one of her best
Good starting point.
Yeah, absolutely. Allie says hello. Good to see you, Allie. Floating Man. Hey, Brooke and all. Hope you're well. Big up, Brooke, for starting up Sainte Cellier, as we're a little short on quality perfume outlets here in the UK. That's very kind.
That's true.
And Cindy M. Hey, everyone. Hi, Cindy. Kalesh. Yeah, that's a good one. Another classic. Rachel has a question. Can Brooke tell us more about her impressions of Christophe Ladamiel's fragrances?
Yes. Is there any in particular you'd like to know about, or?
I'll let Rachel answer, give an opportunity for her to answer. I know I want to try all of them pretty much. Like,
They're
I haven't.
So wonderful.
Yeah. I was a little embarrassed that I had Christophe on and I didn't try any of them. I was skirting around the subject with that one, but yeah, shame on me. But that's definitely on the list.
His collection has gotten a lot stronger. I think when because he launched with quite a few fragrances, and as he's been releasing them one by one, they've just felt a bit more. I don't know. It just felt like because he was devoting all of his time to them, they just kind of feel stronger than the initial batch of them that came out.
Yeah. I just wanted to point out Feliz is here. Gree would be up my street. Okay, I think she has a pretty good idea of where my taste lies. So I trust you, Fliss. Okay, so let's see if Rachel has responded. Oh, we have some more comments. I think we'll get into a little bit more of our in-depth conversation soon, but let's check out some other folks who joined. Mr. Clean, hello all. I've been listening, but haven't been able to type until now. Well, I'm glad that you were listening nonetheless. Good to see you. Oh, here's another question. We'll star that one, A Line on Beauty. Could Brooke talk about her amazing vintage collection? I would like you to talk a little bit about that too, but we'll get back to Rachel here. She did mention in particular Silence the Sea.
So Silence the Sea he actually made that for Strangelove NYC. So it's not technically a zoo perfume, but it is a very if you haven't smelled it, I would definitely smell it. It's really kind of like an abstract oceanic almost like a gray tuberose. It's a very strange perfume. It's kind of akin to more like wearing like a texture than like a whole perfume. It's but yeah, very interesting. I think a lot of the Strangelove perfumes are just really fantastic pieces. I have a few of them in my collection. I have Fall into Stars and Melt My Heart.
Mm-hmm. And Mr. Clean, Brooke, I've just fell in love with and bought a bottle of Everlasting. Let's start with
Oh,
that.
brilliant. Yes,
Yeah.
I was just speaking Tom actually, who's here because he is a big fan of Everlasting. And I'm actually not allowed to publicly sell Everlasting anymore in the UK because of this blinking Lilial ban. It's so
Oh
stupid.
God.
Um,
Yeah.
so I sold it I was able to sell it up until December, and a few people had tried it and really liked it. I sold all the bottles that I initially had from Christoph, and then people are still discovering it though, because I'm still selling samples because I just have, sampling juice that Christoph gave me. So I've been letting people try it. And if they like it, I just let them, tell me. And then I place an order for them, especially when I place my orders with the zoo. But it's like one of the deepest labdanum perfumes like I ever smelled. Like the labdanum in it is very strange. It almost has like a deeply like masculine undertone, but then like as it wears it and it's like kind of merging with the narcissus and there's a bit of moss in it as well. It just like sort of opens up. So it kind of does like it has like this like a transition on skin. So it becomes less like harsh and it becomes more like open and glowy. And it is a really, really beautiful perfume. In fact, out of the first ones that in the zoo collection. Everlasting was my favorite from the initial launch in 2016, I think. It was that one in Community, which has actually been discontinued, unfortunately.
When I kept hearing the name, I was thinking, does this have immortelle in it? Because I think of Everlasting Flowers.
Yeah,
So
you would think. I mean,
yeah,
it has that immortelle feeling of just being
it
kind of
does.
sticky, which I
Yeah,
think is like a wonderful attribute of
love that.
immortelle.
Yeah, I love that. Rachel also mentioned Dangerous Curves.
So Dangerous Curves is like it's kind of like retro, naughty. It's kind of playful. It's like playful classicism. Like it has a very classic structure. Something that you would associate with like floral hearts and warm classic dry downs, all the rest of it. But like he just fills it with like these pops of color, like strawberry and just like
Wow.
big blousy mimosa and a bit of, and he even dilutes it in champagne, which is just, I mean, how fun is that? So it's a fun perfume. Like it's quite like if you've ever seen like pictures of like 1940s Vargas girls, it's kind of like that. Like this, it's quite like there's something just like cheesecake, a bit knowing about it. It's great. It's a great perfume.
Nice. DJ says that he loves, or he or she, I apologize. I don't know. But so I don't want to misgender. DJ says, I love Narcissus, favorite floral.
It's
And
stunning.
I love Narcissus. I think you noticed I was on like a little bit of a liking frenzy on your other page. And I saw that you had a picture of Ostara, which, oh my God, that is,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah. You know what? I actually have a couple bottles of it because it was I
discontinued.
found a bunch of them at TK Maxx, which is you know them as TJ Maxx in the States, but like they were selling 100 ml bottles for like 50 pounds. And I was just like, yeah,
Uh,
I'm having a few of these. And yeah, it's a beautiful perfume. I just
yeah.
don't know like what they were thinking when they quit selling it. It's
I mean,
it's like
number
wearing
crunchers or something, like they didn't sell enough units or something like that. Because aren't isn't Penhaligon's under Puig? Puig probably has
yes.
like a certain agenda, and
Yes.
so I'll just leave it at
Yeah, they're a
that.
bit of a
And
strange company. I mean,
yeah,
they did release that those 4 perfumes made by Maelstrom Studio in Paris, and
mhm,
those were wonderful perfumes.
yeah, yeah.
Very kind of really quite adventurous and really unique combinations of smells. So they can do some interesting things. I wish they would do more of it.
I do too. I wish they would just kind of stay more in that direction. That's the Penhaligons that I love. Thank you so much, Rachel. I appreciate that a great deal. I love materials. So this is actually more of an interview for you. So I don't want to, but hijack it. But I actually have a perfume making background as well. So I love like studying the raw materials and everything. And some of my favorites are like the floral materials, the absolutes, and how it's fascinating that many of them don't really smell like the headspace of the flower, but adding some of it into in a
Yes.
cold is what gives it that je ne sais quoi that helps build it. Yeah, that's really fun stuff. But Rachel, thank you so much for that. I wanted to get back to Line on Beauty's request regarding your vintage collection.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I mean, I've been collecting. I collected vintage perfumes. I probably don't really buy quite as many anymore.
Yeah.
Um, but I collected probably for about 10 years. And I have perfumes. I have like some 1930s Lucien Lelongs, some very old Guerlains from like the 1890s. Um, yeah, and just kind of things going up until the 1980s. Just a real, collections of curiosities.
Mm. What would you say are just a couple that are most prized possessions? The ones where they were almost like a holy grail for you, and
Well, it's funny because like a lot of the ones that I guess prior to finding them, I kind of looked at as holy grail fragrances
yeah,
upon acquiring them. Um, it kind of goes back to like I have a bottle of Nombre Noir because both Luca Turin and Chandler Burr saying it was like the best perfume they ever smelled. So I just happened to um, cross paths with the bottle and um, purchased it. And it is a nice, yeah, like it's a really nice fragrance.
mm,
But it didn't really like I wouldn't say that it was the best thing that I've ever smelled.
mm,
Of course, taste does come play a part in that.
exactly.
Um, but I don't know, like sometimes I think when people have opportunities to smell things that, are basically almost impossible to find, I think that kind of gives them a different type of sheen. And I think there's also a bit of a flex, to say, "Look what I get to smell, but you never will."
Right,
So I think, I think
right.
there's different kind of factors that
Yeah,
play into that conversation.
yeah.
But I mean, it's a really beautiful perfume, and I actually took it to, I organized like a session smelling vintage Serge Lutens perfumes, and I brought it for everybody to smell, and some people there really did kind of fall head over heels for it. It is just kind of like a very rich 80s rose. It has a nice kind of layering with osmanthus, so you get like
Mm,
this extra like jammy
mm,
quality. And like just like some coriander. It's kind of like it's quite spicy as well. But yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful perfume, but I wouldn't say it's the best one that I've ever smelled.
Mm. I honestly think that would be a very difficult question to answer in general. Like,
Yeah.
it really depends on where I am in my life, you
Yeah.
know? Because there are going to be fragrances that impart a certain mood and a feel and just satisfy something in me that another just couldn't possibly. And yeah, that's why I just find it very difficult to pick favorites. So
Yeah. I mean, I have a different favorite perfume like every day.
yeah, exactly. Great. And
Uh,
we have Benji here. Is there any brand you don't stock that you would like to? Have you got your nose on the new Rubini fragrance by chance?
I haven't got my nose on the new Rubini just yet, but I'm desperate to. I'd really like to, and I really enjoy working with Andrea at Rubini. He's really he's a very supportive person, and he's just an absolute joy to interact with. And he's, anytime like I like post a picture of one of his perfumes on like my stories, he's like, "Oh my God, that looks so amazing." And it's just like lots of hearts and it's just very like, it's always a bit of a joy, a rush of joy, just whenever I'm chatting with him. Brands that I would really love to stock, I would probably donate a kidney to stock Vero Profumo, that are currently made at being sold by Campo in Italy. I love Vero's perfumes. I have backup bottles of like every single one of them. I just love her work so much. And yeah, I think it's like it's great that they brought it back, but it's also sucks that it's like 90 euros to ship one bottle outside of Italy.
Mhm. That's a lot. My God. Yeah. Yeah. Which kind of indirectly segues into one of the discussions that I wanted to have with you on um, importing. I wanted to kind of go
Yes.
over that a little bit, with post Brexit and how that has made an impact on retailers and the marketplace in general. I just wanted to kind of get some of your thoughts on that.
So basically, like importing products from Europe into the UK is more expensive than importing them in like from America. Like oftentimes I will, when I get things from America, I most never get like a customs bill or it's very small. But like when I'm importing things from Europe, like just from France, for instance, one of the first orders I placed I had to pay 800 pounds in customs just
Mm,
to have it delivered to me, which is just like an astonishing amount of money. And those sorts of things just didn't exist prior to Brexit. So it's placed a real, it's a strain on me as a small business, but it's
mm,
also a strain on the whole, what perfumes are going to be available in the UK, because after Brexit, we lost so many brands, like Parfum d'Empire,
yeah,
I think Mona Diorio, I think Ducita as well. Just like a lot of them just weren't available here anymore. So that was just, a massive blow to people that love perfume here.
yeah. Just to be denied access to so many great perfume brands and houses. Yeah.
Yeah, and like for Lay and J Mojables, like I work with them, so actually that they can be sold here. Like I do, they showed me how to do all of their like registering their products on like the UK portal, and
Mm,
it was a bit of a learning. It was a learning experience, but it was a nice one because
mm,
now it's something that I know how to do for like other brands that I work with. So
yeah, yeah.
it was kind of good in that respect. But other than that, it's just been a complete nightmare. And
Mm,
also like um, so I just like kind of made the decision that I wasn't going to add those costs onto like anything that I sold as well. So like when I do get like a huge customs bill, then I have to just work extra hard to like sell the things that came in to like recoup the expenses from that. And it also affects like, you know, what I can reorder. And it's if like stock is running low on one product, then I have to think, well, this is how much the replenishment is going to cost. And then it's like,
Mhm.
this is how much the customs bill might cost. And that can be anywhere from, it's completely arbitrary as well. It could be anything from like 50 pounds to 400. You just
Oh
really
my
never
God.
know like what kind of bill you're going to be hit with. So it can be like quite stressful.
Yeah, yeah, it sounds like it. Sounds like it. A lot of questions for you, Brooke. I have them
Oh.
all lined up here. Let me take through some of these. We have Cindy asking, "What do you think of the vintage Lulu by Cacharel?"
Absolutely.
Yes.
Get a bottle of that.
Mhm. And I would hazard to say a vintage is the way to go. Not that the newer version is bad, but I'm going to be one of those.
I think, well, I don't know,
Maybe
like,
one.
as much as I don't always subscribe to the vintage is better, but I think with some perfumes, it just is, and I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
there was something captured in the original, formulation of Lulu that just it just aligns so nicely, like, with the name, like, it feels, like, frivolous and
Yes.
just recklessly gorgeous. Like, it's just yeah, I love that perfume.
I wear that for myself. It doesn't really fit my aesthetic when going out and about in the town, but I wear it for myself.
Yeah.
Not to say that there, obviously you must know by now, there's plenty of fragrances marketed to women that I wear with a plum, but Lulu is it's a certain personality and
Yes.
hard to tame, but gorgeous, gorgeous. We are sentient. What's the most overrated vintage perfume? That's going to be We'll get shots fired at us if we were to choose something like that. I don't know. Do you want to tackle that question? You don't have to.
I want to because
Do it.
I like We Are Sentient a lot.
Yeah, me too. He's my bud.
I guess it's really hard to say. I mean, I do think, Nombre Noir is overrated. I think,
Yeah.
yeah, it's trying to think what I think is actually, like, super overrated. I also think, I think Chanel #5 is very overrated.
Yeah, I'm with you on that too.
It it's it's one perfume that, like, I've tried to wear, like, multiple times, but I've just like, it doesn't feel I feel, like, disassociated from myself in that perfume. Um, but it's a bit of a strange one. I mean, I think it's important because of it's culturally very significant. And also, I think the Marilyn Monroe endorsement of Chanel #5 is kind of massively significant to fragrance culture
Hmm.
because of the sort of tribe it created. And it's like you had women wanting to wear it because they wanted to be Marilyn Monroe, and you had men buying it for their wives because they wanted to imagine Marilyn Monroe smelling the same way, sleeping in nothing else but this perfume. I mean, it's a bit of a meteor in that way, but in terms of, like, the perfume itself, I really don't like it at all.
Yeah, I feel like the myth and the legend has been built so much around it. It sort of supersedes it. It's sort of like, the perfume itself isn't nearly as big as what's been all of the stories behind it. It's
Yeah, and I
yeah,
think it's just the aspirational aspect of it, like,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
something that you're expected to like, and I think that automatically makes me, like, kind of very suspicious of it.
I feel the same way too, and it's actually one of the Chanels that I don't have in my collection in any form, in any concentration at all. I mean, I have so many of the classics, the number 22 and number 19 and Cristal and so on and so forth. But
Yeah,
I never really,
I love all of those,
yeah, yeah.
just not number 5.
I guess I can answer a couple. One of them is Balenciaga Poron, which was released in 1990, and it was an abject commercial failure. Not that that means anything, but because like a lot of my favorites are commercial failures, obviously, like Ostara earlier. Maybe that was a commercial failure. But I think that it's been exalted too much. I think that it's a beautiful men's fragrance, or not necessarily men's but there's something not entirely as unique as people might think it is. I think that just it's another example of where somebody had given it enough superlatives, and then somebody read that, checked out for themselves, thought by the power of suggestion, yes, these superlatives are true, and then so on and so forth, and then so there's that. The same thing with Iquitos, which is from an Alain Delon. Beautiful stuff, but there's so many fragrances that were marketed to women at the time. These really rose forward, sort of amber sheepra hybrids that did the same thing, but you wouldn't necessarily, if you were a collector, have to spend $300 or $400 on. I'm sure you can think of examples of that where it's like, why is there this one that stands out and everybody's demanding it? It has so much demand. And maybe Patou Poron from Jean Patou, which is another one. It's beautiful, but I don't think it deserves all that.
I've seen bottles of that going for astonishing amounts of money.
So much attention to that, and so little attention to all of these amazing patous that get next to it, like the whole his early the first 30, 40 years of Jean Patou, and then they did the Mac collection in the 80s, and very little buzz around those, but the Patou Poron for some reason. So those are my answers. Rachel has a question here. What was it like making the journey from perfume fanatic to shop owner? How did you do it?
I just sort of decided to do it. There really wasn't like a huge journey. It was something that I had thought about doing, probably like went back and forth about it for like 2 years, because I'd worked for a couple of other retailers, and I guess once I saw that it really wasn't as hard as it looked to like put a shop together. I just kind of thought about doing it, and then I knew Barbara just from talking to her like about perfume, and I contacted her after I read her book, and right around the time I finished reading her book, her initial perfumes were coming out. So it was just like this really great synchronicity. And her book was, when I was exploring vintage, like an absolute Bible for me. And I was just up like every night on eBay, like just searching for like all of these perfumes that she had written about, because the way she writes about them is just like, it's so like evocative, and just, it was just really incredible.
Mm.
And I knew that, she really wanted to work with somebody in the UK, because she had, so many people here looking for her work. And, she just, we just kind of started talking about it, and she was due to go to Exxon's last year in June. And she and I just like started talking. I shared that I had been thinking about wanting to set up a project of my own. And she was like, well, would you want to do it before Exxon's in June? And she was like, I'll send you some stock. And I was like, all right, sure. And, after that, I just contacted my friend Anna and her partner Madhava, because they do all of my photography for me. And, I was just like, take some pictures. And I contacted Alexander Helwani at the Perfume Chronicles to ask him if he'd be interested in like writing some perfume descriptions. He was totally up for it. And then I got Alex Musgrave, the Silver Fox, to do the brand description. So we just had this like amazing team of people that were available to help me launch everything. And I just went for it. And then once everything was ready, I built the website in like a weekend, and I just switched it on, and that was and I was just doing another interview, and I think think the person was like absolutely kind of shocked that I would just like launch a retail project with one brand. But honestly, like it's been such a nice experience because I think, you know, when a lot of people launch things, they just kind of want this instant, you know, instant just raining money.
Right.
And, you know, it just never really happens like that. So it's been a nice opportunity to sort of grow. You know, everybody's sort of been growing with me as I grow Sainte Cellier. And that's been just an amazing, like nourishing experience. And I mean, everybody's been so incredibly supportive. I mean, it's just been amazing.
That's great. And Rachel follows up with that with any advice for starting an independent perfume store. The closest
Oh,
one to me is 6 hours
hours.
away.
Oh, no. Do you mean like an online store or do you wanna do like a brick and mortars?
um, I'm not sure if she meant, I mean, when she says the closest one being 6 hours away, that sounds kind of like brick and mortar. But I guess we could start off with online and see what her response is.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it just I think I brick and mortar really is dependent on, like, where you live. Like, for me in London, like, the thought of doing a brick and mortar shop is terrifying just because of
Yeah.
how expensive the
Oh
business
my
rates
God, the
are. I mean,
overhead. Yeah.
yeah, and it's like even just to cover those costs, I think when I looked at it years ago, I would need to be paying £200,000 just in business rates alone in London. But, you know, what I am trying to do though is get enrolled in like pop-ups,
Yeah.
because of, you know, how like devastating Brexit has been for the UK
Mm.
economy. There are so many like empty shops like all over London. So it's like really the only spaces that are like surviving on the streets are like cafes and, you know, like your necessary places. So there's just a lot of empty shops, and there's people that have created programs, some involved with like the city councils themselves, that will
Mm.
take businesses and install you in these empty places just because they need things that will bring people back to the high streets, back to,
Mm.
like, the shops and things.
Mm.
So that's
Mm.
what I'm trying to get enrolled in at the moment, but,
Mm. Mm.
also, like, London landlords have, like, their own special ring of hell.
Oh God. It does sound nightmarish for sure. All right, I'm going to move back to the chat and catch up on some folks who've rolled in a little bit later. Hey, Pep. Good to have you tuned in.
Hi, Pep. I'm going to be placing an order with Pep's, brand Mischia this week.
Yes. I just
You
shared
just
my.
wrote about, Pastille, didn't you?
I did. Yeah, it's
They're wonderful
gorgeous.
perfumes.
Yeah.
Absolutely wonderful.
And the two of them are going to be Marie and Pep are going to be joining me next Tuesday.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh, how nice.
yeah. Jonathan at Sense and Smells IG. Hello, JJ Brooke and friends. Hello.
Hello.
Um, and okay, let's check here. I think somebody's giving me a little bit of flack for the Balenciaga Pearl. Well, now you keep that reviews from 2020. Maybe I would bring it down to like an 8 out of 10 now. I know. Yeah, but it's not really worth the 3 milliliters. $3 a milliliter is kind of expensive for a vintage. And what else did I just miss? There was actually, Keith had a question too. I was just bundling all of his comments together. He asks, on what criteria do you base the decision to reach out to a brand?
So I guess the initial brands that I kind of brought on board were basically people that I had like bought from. So like I think probably the first, yeah, almost all the brands that I'm working with now, like I knew them as a customer and I loved their work. It wasn't available anywhere else in the UK and like they were nice people. Like I don't care how good a perfume smells if the person is like obnoxious. I'm just not like I am not at all into entertaining any personality quirks. It's just not me. So you
Lovely.
know, it has to be like somebody that I am. I enjoy working with. And, we're all just, like supporting one another as well. I mean, the brands that I'm working with, when I see that they've been picked up for a by a new retailer, I'm excited for them. Like, I'm happy that, other people are discovering their work, because it's
Mm,
just all, you know, because the sector of the market is so small, it's like any step forward for anyone is an achievement for everybody, because, it's I think the more people that are realizing, all of the things that there are to discover in independent perfumery, and people kind of working in more artisanal methods,
mm,
it just creates a more enriching experience for the customers at the end of the day. I think they're seeing things in those types of perfumes that they didn't really know they could find, because they weren't really seeing them. And, visibility for these brands and awareness for like the things that they're doing is really, really important.
mm, mhm. Sorry about that. Sorry, I had too many things going on here. It's sort of like when you're doing a live stream, you have to be the producer and everything at the same time. I'm like, I gotta get that comment out of the way.
But I guess
Uh,
just to like further into that, I mean,
oh, of course, yeah,
also things that, I look for, just like, is this at the very base level, is this a perfume that I enjoy wearing? Like,
right,
there's a huge gap between like creating an interesting smell and having a perfume that is like on your body for like 10 hours a day. Like, what is that working? I think
yeah,
that's like really important. And I guess just looking for unique creations. I'm not interested in stalking any copycats or anything that is, deliberately yet deceptively trying to copy
mm,
another style.
yeah, yeah. And you did mention, a lot of the specialist perfumeries where located, there tends to be sort of like this. They're sort of reticent about stepping outside of their comfort zone a little bit. They tend to be a little sheepish
Yes,
and reluctant. Yeah.
it's very hard, and it's very tough for new brands in the UK just generally. I mean, in one of my other jobs at the moment, I'm assisting a really great woman who she worked in kind of like high-end distribution for over 20 years, and she set up on her own last year, and I've been assisting with the development of her own sort of small distribution network. And y- I think when you're trying to introduce like new brands to stores that just aren't used to working with brands that like present in that way, they just don't know what to do with them. Um, so they don't want to deviate from what customers are going to come in and ask for. I like a lot of the work that I'm doing on Sainte Cellier is, I'm trying to cultivate the growth of these brands in the UK, and there's so much work involved in doing that, not just the logistics of, photography and writing and all the
Mm,
rest of it, but it's just, I remember some time ago, Diane St. Clair and I had this wonderful chat about artisanal perfumes, and she was like, when I sold my butter, people would be, falling over themselves to buy it, and, her small batch artisanal butter. And
mhm,
it's like it's so much different with perfume. And I think because perfume has the misfortune of being categorized as a beauty product,
right,
it
right.
also kind of creates another level where people want the reassurance of being ripped off by LVMH.
Mm, mhm. Yeah, it's unfortunate where perfume gets categorized and almost for some folks kind of like an afterthought. It's not really taken that seriously as a viable product. And yes, let's face it, it is sort of like a sorry for the ding. I have somebody texting me in the middle of that. So yeah, that's actually my sound effects for emphasis on a point that I'm about to make. Um, that, perfume is looked at as sort of like a, obviously a non-essential disposable sort of a piece of, an object of vanity. And also, I've had conversations with folks, and I'm sure, and I'm actually going to have Diane in a couple of weeks too. We're basically chatting about all of my future guests coming up in May. She'll be coming up as well. That she may have experienced a bit of a pushback on perfume because of this whole age of clean living and greenwashing, and the potential dangers of perfume. So it's not really, it's become sort of vilified more so than it ever has before.
Oh, and I think also, just to that point, I mean, I think the industry has also allowed that to happen because they don't stick up for
Yeah,
themselves. I
yeah.
think, if they were a bit more forthcoming with
Mhm.
sharing information, they wouldn't really find themselves needing to. They don't even defend themselves. I mean, I was just looking at Christoph's stories. He was really having a go at one brand who was basically just saying that all perfume is toxic. And
Mm.
I mean, first of all, literally no business is going to actively try to harm their customers. Businesses, especially ones that sell non-essential products, need healthy, working customers to buy things they don't need.
Yeah.
That's just the very basic bottom line. That just blows, just all of that is just it's just complete garbage. And I hate, you know, what that Michelle Pfeiffer brand tried
Oh,
doing as
Henry
well.
Rose.
Yes, yeah, just I mean, this whole idea of trying to coerce customers into buying your products by creating a state of alarm and fear that just has no basis in reality. I mean, I think that is, just the grossest kind of gaslighting I've ever seen.
Absolute gaslighting as well, because there isn't even really a transparency in those brands either.
No.
So it's really false. It's really gaslighting, and they're capitalizing on it. These bigger companies are capitalizing on it, and telling people things that they don't even need to tell them. That there's sort of, either they're like these truisms, like obviously, something is not going to have a certain chemical or component in it when it would never be expected.
Yeah.
And it's happening all the time, and not only the food industry, but also in beauty products as well. But also exploiting that this age of chemophobia, this willful ignorance of chemistry. And it's like, I don't expect people to remember everything from their high school chemistry class, but honestly, it isn't as big of a problem if you look at an ingredients list and it's something that you can't pronounce, because there's plenty of natural things that you can't pronounce. I mean, Latin words and a lot of these components that you see are derived from natural materials.
Yes.
The
Yeah, I
feedstock are
think that's
natural materials, and it begs the question of where does natural end and synthetic begins? And it's nuanced. It's so blurry.
Well, I think, I
Yeah,
mean, also people forget that most synthetics are derived from a natural component. It's just that will
yeah.
be less, it will be a more readily available one that they can just find that aroma molecule in. So
Mm.
it's, they're not doing this, like, they're not growing them in jars or anything, or
Mm. And Amanda says the EU is they're heading towards officially classifying perfume as non-essential, with terrible consequences for the industry.
yeah. I think
It's,
also Pia Long is doing a lot of work around trying to fight back against that.
guess who's going to be a guest of mine coming up? I'm thrilled to have her. She's going to be, I think, on the 23rd, so in a couple, two,
Oh,
3
she's one.
weeks.
She's
Yeah.
we haven't, like, we've met a couple of times, but we've been kind of chatting more like over Instagram and stuff. And she's just become somebody who I really appreciate her point of view, and just like the work that they're doing. Their new perfumes, I I actually went out with Nick Gilbert after an event
Yes.
at Jovoy, and he shared their perfumes with me and Stefan Matthews. They're just absolutely incredible. I think they're going to be like one of the best British brands that we've seen in a long time.
I would love to try their work. I've been following them. They would do videos on YouTube, and I thought their chemistry, no pun intended, their chemistry between each other is so good. Like they're just great sense of humor, wonderful people, talented people. Yes, Amanda Pia is amazing. All right, so let's take a look and see. I want to make sure that I'm all caught up in the chat here. So what do you think is a good way to encourage people to explore perfume out of the conventions of what is considered popular and tasteful and based on, you know, the hype of TikTok, social media? You have it. Explore that a little bit with me, and you know, what do you think is motivational or persuasive in that respect?
I think, I mean, I think what it really comes down to is people should just trust what's resonating with them at, very, very base level. I think, framing the whole exploration and discovery of perfume within social media has its own sort of pitfalls attached to it, because there are things that just sort of like they pick up a bit of a life of their own. And I think as we're all sharing like our perfumes that we've bought on social media, kind of opens them up for like judgment from other people. And I think there's kind of a strange culture, I guess, of wanting to fit in, or like kind of wanting to be seen as,
Mm,
having really excellent taste. And I think there can be a somewhat performative nature
right.
to then things that you start. It's kind of like, I guess, something that I always view social media with is like, what is the performance and like where is the person, and where do those two sort of meet and like cross over? And I think it's, just something so symptomatic of this age that we live in,
Mhm.
that we, think about things like this. I mean, I think, there are probably people out there that kind of base their life off of what they're going to be publishing on social media. So I
Yeah, they
think
tailor it. They
yes,
tailor what they're going to do throughout their day.
yes. And, I think looking at that from the perspective of perfume, you do have these kind of strange cultural movements. Like, I mean, what we saw with like Fleur's Missing Person on TikTok, and even to some extent like Baccarat Rouge and
Mhm,
Santal
mhm.
33. But even, prior to that, like I think Aventus was hugely significant to the culture of perfume, just because I think at that point, like men felt very welcome into like the space of perfume, whereas before they may have felt that they couldn't engage with it in quite like wholeheartedly as they have come to do since that time.
Mm,
So I think that was a really big moment. And I think those are things that we've been able to like view and, participate in because of social media. And I think that is, super interesting just from like a cultural perspective. But I think, when it comes to finding like perfumes that you love, just that you wanna wear. I think just don't be afraid to experiment. Don't be afraid to, like, be as unique as you want to be. Um, you know, I think a lot of people talk about, like, compliments and all the rest of things like that. Honestly, like, I could probably count on, like, one hand the amount of times, like, somebody has complimented me on
right.
my perfume. Um so I don't know, I think always do it for yourself and not for what, like, other people are going to like. I mean, my husband is always kind of, like, saying if he likes something and if he doesn't like something, but it never really it never really matters that much to me either way.
Same here. Honestly. And DJ says, I've seen a lot of people asking what others thought about a scent rather than actually liking it themselves. And that definitely does speak to that sort of an externalizing of things. You know, it's more about the external response as opposed to how does it make that individual feel, which I'm finding, yeah, a lot in content creation for fragrance. And he says a lot of how long does it last more so than what does it smell like. Oh yeah, on the forums, that's the first question, not even what it smells like. That can be worked out later. The most important thing is performance. And performance to me is it really does a disservice to experience, because if you're just to base it on those parameters, you're going to be missing out on some absolutely beautiful fragrances. That,
I think, I always tell people if a perfume is smelling the way that it's meant to smell, like if it's smelling the way that it's designed to smell, it's a success. Like that perfume is succeeding. It's achieving like its intent. I understand absolutely concerns about longevity and people wanting to feel that they're getting, I don't know. I think it's the point at which its longevity is equated to quality that I think that way of thinking just needs to be realigned a bit. Yeah, I don't know. It's a really tough one. Personally, like I love perfumes that like don't last a long time, just because then I can put something else on. And
right?
like I think because like I used to work in a lot of spaces where like that were saturated with smells. So it's like in order to like be aware of my own perfume, I would wear like really big, like, big perfumes that took up a lot of space. But then like what happened when we went into lockdown is because I wasn't in those places anymore, it was like my nose cleared. I didn't realize like that I was just like clogged with like smells. And I got really, I was like, and I was texting a friend and I was like, oh my God, like I'm just really into eau de toilettes right now. And they're just like, what? Like, and I just started really like kind of playing with short-lived perfumes. And I think also because like time wasn't structured anymore. So it was like I was putting things on like in the morning and I was kind of like pacing out my day through like different perfumes. And that to me, it was fun. And it also like gave me something to like look forward to, which was also, very satisfying.
I think this is an age of large molecules that get lodged in your olfactory receptors. It's like Donna Sandhu was, she's mentioned more than once that during her visit to Aix-en-Provence, like the whole space is just filled with guaiacol and ambrox, and it was to the point where it was just vertigo inducing because it's just such strong fixatives and these large molecules. They can be intense. They can be overpowering. But I think that this is a market which seems to demand it. It's like a lot of the perfume manufacturers, and this is just a theory, I don't know if this is the truth, but just from my observation, they're observing what the populace is looking for. And I think it's sort of a call and response. So when people are talking about like, I want it to project and I want it to be beast mode and I want people to notice me, they may be very well responding to that and
absolutely.
giving them what they want. So it ends up being this feedback loop of strong, heavy molecules. And I've always argued that, strong, heavy molecules, and this goes back to the whole discussion we were having earlier about the front-loaded. I don't know what you refer to the grand opening. Well, that's what dampens it all. It ends up collapsing it all because that is such an important part, I guess, of commercially viable perfume. Is that that's what people are looking for, that they're going to notice something.
Yes.
A lot later, even if it is not really related to the earliest hour or two development.
Well, and a lot of times that's really just like, it's literally just something kind of like splat on your skin. Like it's not doing anything. Like I'd rather have, a 2 hours where there was just movement and, just a lot happening rather than just like this 14-hour experience where it's just like laying on me. I just think that is, to me, just it sounds absolutely horrendous. But I think a lot of people just haven't like gotten over that yet. I do think like it's possible that people can have like different relationships with fragrances. I just think that's what they feel that they have to ask for. Like
Yeah.
they feel that they need to be like, does this last all day long? And they feel that that has to be a prerequisite to like what they're buying. But I think, if they just take a step back from that and, just appreciate a smell for a smell, it can just totally change your way of thinking.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's true. And then there are some things that, I mentioned this actually in two different reviews that I've written recently, that there are just some accords that are not really meant to be bombastic. And they're not meant to give huge sillage and huge projection. Otherwise, it would kind of pervert the integrity of what that would smell like. I mean, it would take a certain talent, I guess, from a perfumer to try to pull it off. And I mean, and some perfumers have reached out to me and argued that does happen, but I have to smell them because, like, some things in perfume are just meant to be more more subtle. Like
Yes.
If you try to push that, if you try to pull that out too much, it's kind of like when you think in terms of music and you're at a mixing board and you have the levels such a way so you get some of these beautiful undertones and overtones and timbre. Well, when you turn up the levels, it starts to get distorted and it starts to sound not pleasant. It is the same source for that sound, but it isn't. It doesn't sound right. And I think you can use that sort of analogy when, like, I see it happen with a rose note sometimes, where it's like, I mean, you don't need to have a realistic rose. I mean, you can have, a more perfumistic rose, but sometimes the rose that comes through, it's like, I just hear like the psycho theme, like it's almost headache inducing, and I'm noticing that a lot with some more modern releases where it's such an effort to make it. It's like the Daft Punk song, harder, faster, stronger.
I also think like people take they take wearing perfume like too seriously. Like for me, I'm very I think it just kind of comes back to like really knowing like the perfumes that I wear and understanding where I'm going to get like the most from that time spent with them. So it's like things that I like to wear like in the morning or something like before bed, and I wouldn't like wear that like as my going out for the day perfume. I think it's just like it's understanding what you're using this particular perfume for, and I think, people should just have a bit more of a playful relationship with their fragrances and not just like expect it to, I don't know, be this thing that's just like lasting 14 hours a day and it's, a huge part of their identity. And it's just
Yeah,
like, no, it can be part of your identity for like this half hour and then you just get another one.
right, right. No, I agree with that. Rachel is actually with her high school fragrance club, and they're
Really?
watching. Yes, and they want to know the best fragrances for teenagers. Do you want to try
Oh,
to tackle that
wow.
one? Yeah.
Um,
Good question.
yeah, God, that's a really good question.
Yeah.
Um, Geez, for teenagers, I honestly, I'd be reluctant to really recommend anything like strictly for younger people. I think the best thing for young people to do is just experiment. I recently tried the Fleur collections, which I think is kind of designed for a younger audience, and they were very approachable perfumes. But what I found was they were so like monosyllabic. And I just started wondering, if you're a young person just sort of developing an interest in fragrance, and this is the perfume that you're presented with, this one-dimensional experience, is that fostering a deeper appreciation of scent in young people? So, I think if you're on a budget, probably the best thing to do would maybe subscribe to like a subscription service or something that really encourages discovery and experimentation in a way that's a bit more non-committal than a full-size 100 ml bottle. And I think also like when they're trying multiple things, that kind of gives them a bit more to talk about as well. And if they're like in an easily shareable format, that also kind of, maybe they're trading or they're trying each other's. And I think, it's just really important for people to sort of like understand what they like. And I think that's
Mm,
not really just exclusive to teenagers. I mean, I have conversations with customers, later in life, and they've just discovered like niche fragrance, and
mhm,
they
mhm.
just, they want to try everything, and they're looking for like the weirdest thing. And
Yeah, yeah. I think that that was actually going to be my suggestion as well, is to sample first. If you're kind of new to the whole, if it's like a new frontier for you, and you want to figure out what it is that might appeal to you, is to do a service and just have samples sent to you, and then you can kind of figure out what works for you, what speaks to you, and then from there you can kind of narrow it down and choose some things that you would want to wear on a regular basis. And if you're an aspiring nutty fraghead like we are, you're on the right track because you're exploring, you're opening yourself to different styles and different tastes, and cultivating your own your own sort of preferences as far as fragrance. So yeah, I think that I agree with you. I think that that's a really smart idea. Amanda says the same thing: samples and let them explore. Exploration is key, and I think
yes.
that's how many of us start. You know, when I was a teenager, I just pretty much had whatever was thrown to me, whatever was in a stocking during Christmas. That was what I was going to wear, and I just would wear it because I thought it was cool. And that just sort of evolved into, you know, wanting to wear what other people are wearing, and then realizing, well, I don't want to wear what everybody else is wearing. Let me do a little bit of exploring on my own. So that's where it begins. A little bit of exploration. So
And
great.
were there any that like sort of really changed your like perception of fragrance?
Yeah, so I was a weird kid, just like I'm a weird adult. So pretty early on, I became sort of a fragrance nerd. So I was about 18, and I would go into the store that was in Harvard Square in Cambridge called Colonial Drug. And this was a very old style drugstore. They would have the pharmacy, they would have everything that would be carried in a pharmacy, but they would carry uh, an impressive selection of fragrances. They carried Jean Patou, they carried Creed, they carried Caron, they carried all the different like classic houses, and even some Hermes and Guerlain. And the earliest fragrances that I bought that were totally not cool at the time, because I was into like being old fashioned. I was into kind of like being like somebody from the 60s. So I ended up buying um, and wearing a Canon from the Scannon was the name. I mean, the name of the producer of the fragrance. It was pretty much an everyman's fragrance of the 60s. It had like a wooden cap, so I would wear that. I also picked up my first bottle of Habit Rouge, the Eau de Toilette in the late 90s, and Equipage from
Oh,
Hermes.
nice. Good choices.
So those were on my dresser. But then when I started to get into my early 20s and I wanted to start to get attention, I was much more kind of like, that was just for me. And then I wore the stuff that would attract other people because, early 20s, you get the pressure to. So there was a detour in the 20s. And then by the late 20s, I was like, F that. I walked into a Barney's and I saw that Serge Lutens display in the Frederick Mall. And I'm like, the rest is history. Like it started in my late. It really picked up in my late 20s. So
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so mostly affordable because I think that's appropriate for their age, but honestly, let them explore. Yeah. Obviously, I'm not going to suggest to teenagers, check out Frederick Mall. You won't be disappointed. Wait until later. Trust me, I wish I waited until later because I racked up credit card debt when I first got into Frederick Mall. All right, let's catch up with the chat at a little bit here. And Ellena Beauty also says one thing I've noticed is that teenagers are into sweeter scents now. Even deodorants are sweet. Lynx chocolate and oud, winning combination there. I have a bone to pick with oud. I can appreciate oud, but I'm very picky about it. But the idea of chocolate and oud together is like peanut butter and sardines, as far as I'm concerned. What I will say is this: I don't know if you would agree with me, Brooke, but I think that young people, if they were to be exposed to some classic fragrances, it hasn't ever really been part of their zeitgeist because a lot of the people who are wearing them are not really around or they're not wearing them as much, that I think that some younger people might actually have a more open mind than we think. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think they definitely would. I think some time ago I did a live for another place that I was working at with Clara Wheel from Early Modern in Glasgow. She also she has like a fragrance sort of school there, and she said something that has just always kind of stuck with me since we had that conversation. That she found it just really disturbing how young women are being encouraged to smell sweet and consumable. And I thought that is, culturally just one of the strangest aesthetics to put on to young women. Why are they being encouraged to smell like cupcakes and desserts and all the rest of it? And just seeing that recent interview that they did with the Kaoli pistachio gelato, and poor Olivier Crest looks like he was handcuffed to that sofa. But the first thing she said is like, I want to smell like a snack. And it's like, why are you encouraging young girls to smell like cake and something just so pleasing? And I don't know, I think there's just it's something that I just I find just very weird. And
yeah, I agree with you on that point. I find it a little unsettling, and that is definitely a trope. I want to smell like a snack. Here are 10 fragrances that will make you smell like a snack.
Yeah.
And I mean, does it have to be a sweet one? Can't it be a savory snack?
Well, yeah.
Can't it be something inedible?
Can it be like a dagger or like poison?
Yeah.
Just like anything. Just like, why are they just being given like these cupcake perfumes? I don't know. It's like, is that all you think of young women, that they can't aspire to smell anything other than just like sweet and edible? And it's just really like, why are you doing that?
Right. I mean, even like something like Love's Baby Soft in the 70s had a more perfumistic, inedible quality in its dry down. It was not 100% gourmand. I mean, you didn't really have gourmand then, but yeah, it's a bit peculiar how that is being pushed so much.
Well, even that, I mean, that I think that perfume was almost more memorable for the infantilizing marketing campaign than actually for like the smell itself. You had, a young woman kind of acting like a child.
Right.
And it was very distasteful. And I mean, I'm sure today people would be out with torches and pitchforks if it were aired anywhere. But yeah,
it's funny how it's just sort of now being suggested in the perfume itself. It's very childlike, like a dessert, where you can't get away with it with the advertising. Let's just shift it right into the juice itself. Yeah. Here's Rachel. It's an odd cultural moment. I wonder if it has something to do with the literal amount of sugar and high fructose corn syrup in our actual food, plus the lack of real nature in our kids' lives.
That could be. I
Yeah.
think there is, something to that. Because I mean, I mean, if you think about the perfumes, like, in the '70s when, you were having, like, the waves of feminism, I mean, they
Yeah.
were, like, very spirited. I mean, you think about, like, perfumes like Diorella, and
Yeah.
they were impactful, but also beautiful, and, they were just very secure within themselves, and I think that is a much more important thing to strive for than just being liked.
Right. No, and think about those, like those, the green sheepras, the earthiness. They're at, herbs and patchouli and galbanum and sportiness, like, sort of leveling the playing field a little bit as
Yes,
far as like what women and men can wear, and even dabbling with unisex. People say that CK1 is the first unisex fragrance, but you had something like YSL Libra, Libra in the mid '70s, I think, was the first marketed unisex, like outright marketed unisex
really.
fragrance. Yeah, yeah, wasn't a terribly successful release. Um, Alliage was a sport
Oh,
fragrance spray.
incredible
Love
perfume.
Alliage.
Yes.
We're gonna have. I think we'll have a few different bonding moments, but I have my Alliage. A lot of Estee Lauder I swoon over. Anyhow, they were the
Uh,
great, like the very accessible but exquisite perfumes. Yeah. What were you gonna say?
when I was reading, perfume blogs a lot, I remember, Neil Chapman on the, Black Narcissus,
Yeah.
blog, he described Private Collection as having a rich divorcee accord, and I just thought that was, like, the most fantastic way to describe it, and I do, like, I think,
I love
first of all,
that.
those House of Lauder perfumes that sell for, like, 50 pounds are incredible. Um,
Yeah.
Even the current formulation of Azure is just stunning. I mean, it is
I
like,
agree.
oh my god.
I agree.
Just the
Oh my god.
contrast that they've done in this perfume is like the light and the dark, and it's so, like, fierce. It is just it's a stunning perfume. It's the one thing, like, if people ask me for a suggestion, even though I have a whole store of my own,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like, "Try that one."
It means so much to me that you've affirmed that, because I've tried to convince people, don't sleep on the modern Azure. Sure, you have I mean, I have both of them because, of course, the nutter that I am, like I have to have all, like do comparisons and everything. So I had to get an older version as well. And the older version, of course, there's a certain facets of it that you don't find, but that it doesn't minimize how great the modern version is. Like,
Not
and
at
plus it's
all.
a no-brainer. I mean, I see it selling for not very much. So good, so good. Like, I'm glad. I'm just grateful that it is still in production when
Yes.
so many are fading away and being discontinued. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I was just doing a comparison on a stream last week where I was saying, like, sure, there's a lot of hype on getting that vintage. It is now going for $250 to $350, which is, when you think about it, insane with an Estee Lauder perfume. Get the modern version. It's right
Well, I
there.
think I think, I mean, as somebody with a massive, collection of vintage perfumes, I think people there's a romanticism to,
Yeah.
like,
Mhm.
things from the past, just generally. I mean, it's like you're getting something with, like, its own history, so already it just has, like, a shine about it. But I think also, like, vintage perfumes were formulated to, like, fit into different lifestyles. It's like
Yeah.
they had to, like, hold their own in, like, rooms full of cigarette smoke, and also,
Exactly.
you know, vintage perfumes have aged, like, they are so matured. They're matured to the point that, it may not even be recognizable to what it was originally meant to be, and I think when you
Mhm.
get this huge, like, this dense wave of perfume, I think, again, kind of going back to that whole idea around performance, people equate that as being of a better quality, when in
Mhm.
fact, it's just really old, and the certain base notes just, like, take over, and it's just a natural part of that perfume's aging process, but it doesn't mean that they're a better perfume, and I think unless if you have access to everything in the Osmotech, where you can compare what they would have smelled like when they were made fresh to what your vintage bottle smells like, and who knows what kind of life that bottle has had. You can't really say for sure which one is better and which one isn't. It just kind of comes down to what you like. And if you love, that 300-pound bottle of perfume, just love every blinking drop of it.
Yeah.
I think, just let people have what they want.
Right. Let them to enjoy, what is accessible to them first of all, because
Yes.
not everybody can afford it. Yeah. Yeah. That it's such a subjective thing. Yeah. It's important. It's important to keep that in mind. DJ has a question here that I've been had on hold for a little bit. What do the two of us think of a licorice as a note, and what would we recommend? You
I
like
have
licorice?
I have a very guilty pleasure licorice perfume of Lolita Lempica.
I knew it.
That is like the one that and even speaking of Pia, she had a thing in her stories a couple of days ago asking about licorice perfumes with anise and I think bay leaf, and I was like, that sounds like you're making a grown up version of Lolita Lempica, and I really want to visit her. Um, I just think that perfume is it's so fun, and it's indulgent in like all of the best ways while also still being, it's almost like I think of it as like a gothic après Londe, um, because it has like a lot of classic elements, but just in this completely kooky, off the hook way. And again really affordable. I mean, I've seen bottles of that going for like 20 pounds.
Yeah, yeah. There you go with accessible. It's one that's not gonna break the bank. And here I go with one that might break somebody's bank if I do, because I think it's only in the bell jar now, if I'm not mistaken. Du Samer,
Oh yes,
seriously,
that is
Tons.
a gorgeous perfume. Yeah, I'd buy that one.
Yeah,
That was my second Lutons, actually.
it's one of my favorites. And I mean, it's this confluence of like this licorice accord with this wormwood, very realistic. Or they must put some wormwood oil in there as much as they could. They were permitted to the top notes, and then it dries to like one of the best vanilla dry downs. But yeah, that would be probably my favorite licorice fragrance. Du Samer, Serge
Yes,
Lutens.
really
Yeah.
good choice.
Great, great. Okay, let's get back to the chat here. Oh, that's the one I actually have, Nick S. Au masculin. That's the one I have. Not because I had to have the men's version, but it's just the one I prefer a little bit more
Oh,
so for my
yes,
taste.
that
Yeah.
one. Yeah, I used to have a bottle of that, and I gave it to somebody.
And Align on Beauty also confesses that it is her guilty pleasure as well. And we have folks who are asking about Du Samer. I'm going to put that in the chat so that they know the spelling. So tippity tap. I have the awful butterfly keys on my old MacBook Pro that are extremely loud. So just bear with me, folks. All right. And then I also have a broken A key. I need a new laptop, apparently. I'm complaining. Oh, thank you so much, Align on Beauty. You did it for me. Don't have to worry about typing. Great. So yeah, that's a good question to throw at you too. So we talked about licorice. What are some of your favorite notes?
I mean, definitely, I'd probably have to go with galbanum as like my most
Yeah.
favorite note ever. Just because of the perfumes that it was used in, like number 19 and Cristal, that I like wore before I even knew like what notes were. And, also kind of like going back to Germaine Cellier's work, like all of her perfumes that incorporate the use of galbanum. And I just think it smells like chewing glass. I mean, it's just like it's the most like assertive, menacing smell, but it can also be like quite like light and ethereal. I mean, I think like with Cristal EDT especially, you get like the real sort of like viridescent quality that it can have. So I like that it's also kind of like a shapeshifter, and it can kind of be fierce, but also quite magical as well.
Yeah, yeah. Galbanum, why I love galbanum. There's my treatise on galbanum. Um, when I was a kid, I loved messing around with plants and like picking them apart and smelling what they, like obviously I had a fascination with scent ever since I was a kid because I remember, just examining different plants, and galbanum takes me back to just smelling like the stems and like releasing whatever sort of not necessarily oils, but whatever sort of exudate comes out of the plants. And I love that very wildflower, weedy, wild growing plant kind of greenness. It's not like your, it's not like a pleasant herbal green. It's not like a delightful leafy green or salad green or whatever. It's not like basil. It's like green with a vengeance.
Yeah.
It's raw, real green, and like you said, it's sort of like chewing on glass. It's like it's stark. It's sort of it gives this naturalism to a fragrance that's almost arresting. Like whoa, that's actually one of my favorite notes as well. Apparently, what else?
Also I like Narcissus a lot. Just again, like that has its own sort of green elements. I love Osmanthus. I like a really dirty jasmine. What else really? I like Immortelle. I mean, Immortelle was a bit of a dark horse for me. It was only when I sort of experienced it in like Ombre Supreme that I kind of understood it a lot more. And also like they include it in their Grand Cru ingredient box, so you really get to smell the different qualities of it there. And I think that kind of made me look at it in a different way, whereas before I just thought it kind of smelled a bit like, I don't know, like just kind of sticky and gross, but this was like sticky and nice. So yeah, those would be some of my favorites, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Immortelle is a tricky one for some people because it has like that fenugreek maple syrup kind of quality that can be a little bit much for certain noses, but I can't get enough of it. I remember the first time I smelled Sabla, so my friend John Beeble, January Scent Project, he mentioned one of his favorite fragrances was Sabla, and I wanted to know what the deal was. When I first smelled it, I'm like, how on earth is there a perfume that smells like this? Like, it just is so unlike anything else because of that high content of that Immortelle Absolute. So it was sort of like an immediate, like apparently wasn't a dark horse for me because I was just all over it. I'm like, I want to smell every single kind of Immortelle fragrance there is in existence. I would say actually more of a dark horse for me would be jasmine because I had
Really?
to warm up to jasmine because here we go. I'm a man. I'm a male. I don't wear florals, and it took me so long to get over that. And jasmine to me was like the ultimate in femininity. So I had to warm up to it, and now it's like just I can't get enough.
Yeah.
I love really indolic, narcotic, like sweaty, humid jasmine. Like I just love it, and it doesn't even matter to me. I'm at that point in my fragrance journey. It doesn't even matter to me. Gendering a fragrance is so relevant to me at this point. But it did take me some time to realize, you know what? It is okay for me to wear it and to wear it in public because
Yeah.
I've worn them in public, and people don't come up to you and say, "Just want to let you know something. You're wearing a fragrance that's meant for the ladies." Like nobody has ever,
No.
never. It's yeah.
I think ultimately, like your own, you add an element to every perfume that you wear. So it's like a jasmine on me is going to smell completely different to like what it smells like on you. And I weirdly, like I do like if I were to like stick a color on jasmine, it would be like that rich, like Klein blue. I don't see like jasmine in like feminine colors. To me, it's very like it's just rich, regal blue.
I love that, the synesthesia. That I kind of have that too. And it's interesting how rose sometimes looks more blue to me than actual, like, and obviously no roses are blue, but I get this like dark cobalt blue for some reason, if it's mixed with like, if it's like a musky rose, especially.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's an interesting topic in itself. Like sometimes I'll think of certain instruments and how they sound. Like certain fragrances will sound like woodwinds to me. Certain fragrances will sound like keyboards, harpsichord, Fender Rhodes keyboard, Farfisa organs. So weird.
Well, I think because, smell itself has such a limited language. There's just not really many words dedicated just to describing smells. So just have to borrow from different sensory realms to try to uh, convey an understanding of what the perfume would smell like. And a lot of times that's color, that's texture, that's pitch, just all of these different elements that you can kind of bring together to describe the way something smells. And I think that's like why, good perfume writing is so underrated, because it's so difficult to actually do, because you really have to put words to something that doesn't have any of its own.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And it's, since actually having a presence online, doing any type of content pertaining to fragrance, first and foremost, I identify myself as a writer, and that's what where I most feel at home. That being said, it has been very difficult for me to develop my writing as a fragrance writer, because I've had to push my perceptions a little bit more. And I think that's where I have begun to sort of hear certain things, not the wrong way. I mean, not hear things like there's a mental health concern, but hear things, in a synesthetic way, or see certain colors, or feel certain textures, and use all of my other senses to substitute for that lack of language. And then it ended up, being more of sort of setting a scene and telling a story and building around that and stuff. And yeah, it isn't easy. And I think that's why a lot of people, when they're kind of like, they have a writer's block, they're like, let me get that notes pyramid. Let me just work with that notes pyramid, see what I smell from the notes pyramid. And I've been there too. It's where it's like, oh God, like, what do I say? How do I express this? It's so hard to words. And
I think
yeah.
sometimes I think, it's hard a perfume can still be thoroughly enjoyable without having any real definitive things to say about it, other than I just really like it. But oftentimes, like, sometimes, especially with Germaine Cellier's work, I mean, it just gives me like full, like, just a whole like narrative, a story, characters, and I think especially like because I look at a lot of her work um within the like time that it was released within, and I think there's a lot to be gleaned from the lives of, probably the women that were wearing it at that time, that was just, super relevant to their experiences. And, it's quite interesting to think about um, why she made these perfumes to like smell in this way. I mean, I think like Bondi just feels so like independent, um and if you think, like, when it came out, a lot of men were just, like, away at war, and, women were just leading these lives that they probably never had to imagined that they would need to live. And, perhaps some of them really embraced that in a way that was quite freeing for them. But then conversely, you have then Fracas, which came out just 4 years later, and it's so, like, it's just the polar opposite of that, but you had this responsibility, placed upon women to now, they're meant to men are back. It's like, now they're, like, having to be subject to the male gaze. It's like, there's
Right.
sex, there's, like, the new Dior's new look with its whole, like, disproportionate shapes that it put women's bodies into. And you think of Fracas within like that context, it's sort of like over the top, like explosion of femininity. But I think like what was really fantastic about what Cellier did with it is like she just like weaponized it. She was like, right, so you want, if this is what you want, we're going to see how much you can actually handle. And she was just turning the knob, and she just went with it. And I think it's such a statement perfume. And I think people, you know, even though I'm probably the one person in the world that's ever thought about Fracas within that context, I think people respond to its huge character. And it is, you know, it's such a fierce fragrance, even though it, you know, doesn't present as being maybe quite as aggressive as something like Bondy. It has like its own kind of power to it.
It certainly does have its power to it, and I love how you contextualized each of those, given when they were released. And at once, you know, Fracas may seem to be like a seductress type of fragrance, but there's certainly a power to it that can't be denied. What a fascinating perfumer too, Germaine Cellier, in her life. Like,
yeah,
so much that you could, yeah.
Well, I think, you know, even just, you know, I think a lot of people, when you talk about Germaine Cellier, it's like her sexuality is brought up in a way that her male counterparts just aren't subject to. And you know, it's just, you know, very peculiar that people will have like conversation, oh, maybe she was a lesbian, maybe she was. I mean, it's like, why are we not like asking if Jean-Carl was a homosexual? Like, why is it like just her? And I think, I mean, I think it's kind of cool that her perfumes were just so like, you know, so full of character that people would like would question her character in such a way. I mean, that is certainly saying a lot for the impact that her work had upon people. But, you know, it's also, I think, something that as a woman that she's been subjected to in a way that her male counterparts were not.
Yeah. It's almost, you know, she's already a minority in a field, and then it's almost like there's so much more scrutiny, you know, the magnifying glass on every single little detail, and being held to certain standards, and yeah.
Well, her boss, I think it was Louis Amique, actually, he set up a completely new company just for her to work at, because she just didn't get along with Jean-Carl, or, you know, she was just bumping heads with everybody. But she was so good at her job, he didn't want to lose her, so he just installed her in her own lab. And I just think, yeah, if that's a career goal, yes. To be so good at your job that you could be so objectionable that the only answer is to give you your own company. Yes.
That's a blessing in disguise, actually. Like, yeah, if only more of us could have something like that happen. Weird Sentient asks, how do the newest versions hold up, like Bondy and Fracas?
I like the modern version of Fracas. I'm less inclined to say I like the modern version of Bondy. But my favorite formulation of Bondy is actually the Eau de Toilette. I think it has the best use of very sharp green notes in the beginning, and the base isn't quite as rich as the Parfum, but it just has like, it just kind of smarts a little bit more.
Now I kind of want to grab my bottle and hold on a second. I always have to do it once in a stream. Grab a bottle. So here's my bottle. I think my bottle's from like the mid to late 80s or around that time. So. It's an Eau de Toilette. And this is the Eau de Toilette too, and I prefer it for much the same reason. And oh, it actually stayed. I was like, and it doesn't stay, which is such a pain in the neck. And now it's actually staying. That's kind of funny. I wonder if it like it. Yeah. Wow. So I have to admit, I do have a real penchant for isoputylquinoline, like IBQ. It has to strike a good balance, and I think that this is sort of like the maximum, and I absolutely love this. But yeah, this is a version I have, and this is, and just to answer that, I don't know. I've never actually experienced the newer versions because I found this online being sold for very cheap, and it was sealed, and I went for it, and this is the only one that I've ever experienced, to be honest with you. And Freka, I can't really give a very much of an opinion on it. A good friend of mine, that was like her signature. And it's interesting what happens when you have somebody who wears a signature fragrance. It's sort of like I have that so banked in my mind that I didn't even really need to have a bottle for reference. It was just sort of like locked from like that's her smell. And I think it was when it was re-released after years of not being in production. So we're talking, I think, like 2009, maybe. It smelled great to me, but I don't know how it's changed since then.
Yeah, I wore a modern version, I think, in the like early 2000, maybe like late 90s, and it was wonderful. So again, I didn't know anything about perfume, but I was just having a time of my life wearing Freka.
Yeah, the Robert Piguet, sort of like the relaunching. I forgot the name of the perfumer who reconstructed them.
I think it was Erlen Guichard, maybe.
Yeah. I think he did a great job with Bagari. I have that one. Future. I like that one a lot
yes.
too.
Yeah, I like
that's
that.
And that was actually originally, when it was produced, it was like a one and done or something. It was only on the market for like 4 or 5 years. So it's really remarkable that they even chose to resurrect that one, because it didn't really establish itself. It wasn't around for very long, but I think that one was well done. One that I haven't tried, and I've been on the fence about it because I hear mixed reviews of it, is his construction of Calypso. Have you tried that one?
No, I've not tried that one.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have a vintage eau de cologne of Calypso, and if it's anything like that one, I mean, I don't really see how anybody could mess it up.
Yeah.
Who knows?
And I have Cavache as well. I like the eau de toilette that came out with that. I don't know, like 12 years ago, and I have a bottle of that. But I think it's been redone as an eau de parfum. So Tripler, I don't know if it was the newer eau de parfum version that was underwhelming to you. I like the one that was put out, I think, in like 2010 or so. So yeah, Piguet, good stuff. Well, I think at this time we'll go backstage for a little bit and chat between the two of us, and we'll start to wrap up things here. But I wish I had like a somebody to help me out with this and start the music, so I don't have to do it myself. It kind of change. It kind of here we go. Hey, here's my closing music. We have just a few more weeks left, so I'm just going to give you the lineup coming up here. Next week we have Marie-Pierre Blanchette and Pep Delisandri. They'll both be joining Rachel and I for 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time Effluvium. That's May 9th, Tuesday, May 9th. May 16th, Pia Long will be joining Rachel and I. May 23rd, Roberto Dario and Diane St. Clair Sense will be with me and Rachel. That's May 23rd. And then the finale for the season, May 30th. I like how that went with the music. Ooh, crescendo. Marc Robes OA, Margie Noir, Rachel. I guess it's going to be coming back. Ryan will be coming back. Perfume Bonfire will be coming back for the finale. We'll have a couple of other surprises as well. So that will be May 30th, Tuesday, May 30th. Summer recess until September 19th. We will have monthly editions. We have a special edition June summer session with Persiles on June 27th. So we're just going to get the closing comments and then sign off here. Let's see what else we've missed. Bye-bye and thank you both. Thank you. And got the square cube, Monsieur Balmain. Very nice. Thank you for tuning in. Good night, Nick S. And thank you so much, Brooke, for joining me in this conversation. This has been a real delight.
Oh, thanks for inviting me. It's been really nice.
Yes. And we'll chat a little bit more backstage. And until next time, everyone, enjoy your morning, afternoon, evening, depending upon where you are in the globe. And we'll see you all very soon.
Bye.
All right. Take care now.